Liberty Nation. Truth is making a comeback.
Welcome to another edition of the Liberty Nation Roundtable. Joining me today for our talk about Family Feud immigration blues are our usual suspects. We have Scott DiCosenza, our legal affairs editor and all-around nitpicker for LibertyNation.com. Also, Graham J. Noble, our chief political correspondent and national columnist, Sarah Cowgill. Welcome, one and all.
Hey.
Hi.
So it sounds like the Trump administration issued an executive order today, and I will give you just the highlights. Quote, "It is the policy of this administration to vigorously enforce our immigration laws. When an alien enters or attempts to enter the country anywhere else, that alien is committed at least the crime of improper entry and is subject to a fine or imprisonment. This administration will initiate proceedings to enforce this and other criminal provisions unless and until Congress directs otherwise. It is also the policy of this administration to maintain family unity, including by detaining alien families together where appropriate and consistent with the law and available resources." All right, who wants first hack at that? Don't all speak at once.
I'll take it. This is a full reversal by the Trump administration, who I think as recently as last week vociferously claimed that the law did not permit them to act in a manner other than they had been acting, which is to say the separation of families when the criminal act of illegal border crossing was present. And when the politics matters as much, the law can be bent, I suppose, and that's I think what we have here. The nonstop parade of horribles that so many media outlets were able to present successfully and lay at Trump's feet yielded this result. And by the way, I have to say that as I'm an open borders advocate, so to me it's all good. But I think that it's just a crass or cold political calculation that motivated this change of events today, Lisa.
All right, so there we have the classic libertarian view. Who wants to go next?
Well, I will, and I think it's an okay executive order. I mean, he had to do something, or this is going to dominate the 24/7 news cycles until eternity. And it's because they were getting. I mean, they had Rachel Maddow was crying last night over the AP news report that a kid was crying. It needs to be addressed and dealt with. It's a big old problem in the United States. I don't agree with Scott whatsoever about open borders. There's 330 points of entry that you can legally come to this country through. Why do you need to go around those? It doesn't make any sense. But he caved to political and to the pressure in the media and the wailing leftists crying about everything. And that's okay with me because I do believe we need to solve the issue. I mean, it is a humanitarian issue to some degree, and it needed to be solved. Done. Game over. Now what?
Okay,
now what are they going to cry about?
My question is, where were the violins when the Obama administration was separating families?
Well, I think this whole thing has been a bit of a farce from beginning to end, really, and I think both sides have not dealt with the issue well. I mean, I think we have to remember that when it comes to immigration, the Democrats see this as one of their greatest components of any election campaign. So they never want to get too close to actually supporting any meaningful, comprehensive, and rational changes to the immigration system, because it always behooves them to have hordes of poor, miserable people from third world countries hammering at our borders because they can use that to scrape up a few more votes. So I don't believe that Democrats ever had any genuine sympathy for these poor children who were in dog kennels apparently, which of course they weren't. And of course, I think what's happened is inevitable. I mean, I'm certainly, as much as I'm lean libertarian, I'm certainly not an open borders advocate. But at the same time, I do think that this whole thing was not a good look. Whichever way you slice it, it was never a good look for the Trump administration. And I think he really ended up having no choice but to do this executive order. But of course, we have to remember that now this executive order has been signed. The Democrats will very quickly move on to some other angle of attack as to why this is just not good enough, and more needs to be done. So it's not over by a long shot.
No, Graham.
Okay, let me just say this. At Liberty Nation, we like to say truth is making a comeback. So what is the truth here? I mean, did Trump institute this policy of separating families?
They changed the practice to be consistent with the law.
Right.
Now, there are many federal government practices, Lisa, that are inconsistent with the law, but those aren't changed unless you want them to be changed. So I think this was a case of Trump, in effect, changing policy to suit his own desires rather than just a general, let's have fidelity to the law in all matters. That's what, I mean, it seems like that's the obvious answer, is that they changed the policy in order to comport with the law, not for the purpose of comporting with the law, but for political purposes. And they got burned on it and then adjusted course for the same reason.
All right, Sarah, I cut you off. Go.
Oh, well, Scott is correct about that. I'll have to give him that one. But, what are the Democrats going to come up with next? It's already started on social media. And just before we came on, one of the local news stations was running it, and every liberal comment was, well, now what are they going to do with all these people that are, what are these families? What are they going to do with them? Like, well, you can't have it both ways. You either detain them or you don't. So, now everybody's crying that there's no place for these poor people to go.
Nancy Pelosi's district has a lot of free space. I think that we can send them right out there. And, let's put tents in parking. Let's do whatever we can to help these folks with the federal largesse. Right in. I mean, her office space is federal property. As a matter of fact, she'll figure something out. Let's move them in.
There you go.
Graham, you were going to say?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, and it's really a continuation of what I was saying earlier on, is that, the thing is, whatever Trump does, and, he's figured this out already. I think he knew this even before he became president. Whatever Trump does on any of these issues will never satisfy the left anyway.
Exactly.
Republicans always have a habit of eventually caving to pressure from Democrats. It's just what they seem to do. But I almost, I can't say that I like the idea of any children being separated from their real parents. If they're actually being, if they are being taken to another facility other than where their actual parents are going. And I emphasize that because, of course, a lot of these minors are not necessarily in the company of their real parents when they arrive here. But for those who are, I don't think anyone likes to see parents separated from their children. But, I almost wish that Trump had just stood his ground on this and said, no, we're not changing this policy. Because one thing this policy was doing is there is a lot of signs that it was already beginning to serve as a deterrent for people still down there in Guatemala and El Salvador and these other countries to have second thoughts about coming here with their children.
No, but he had to. He had to walk this back. He's got midterms coming up. And you don't want, the next 6 months hammered, constantly crying children in Trump facilities. You don't want that in the news. He's got to find something else. And that was just going to take over. He had to walk it back.
Well, nobody's better at the negative optics than the Democrats. Go ahead, Graham.
Well, I kind of disagree, and partly, Sarah, with all due respect, the one reason why I disagree is because, Trump has kind of ushered in a whole new, a whole new political landscape here. And I actually believe that if he'd stood his ground and said, no, this is the way we are doing things now, and the message is, if you don't want your children to end up in some kind of detention facility separated from you, then do not bring your children to this country without doing so legally. And I believe that if he'd really stood firm and absolutely said, no, I am not budging on this, we are enforcing our immigration laws, I think he would have got a remarkable swell of renewed enthusiasm from his base and from the conservative side in general. And I just think he should have said, as I've often said, I think he should have just stood there and said, come at me, bro.
Lightning round. What are the chances that immigration reform will get passed and Democrats will come to the table? We'll start with you, Mr. Cosenza.
3-2 against.
Graham.
No, not a chance. No, Democrats don't want to be part of any immigration solution.
Sarah.
I agree. No way. No way will they meet at the table.
You're all wrong. They are going to come to the table and it will get passed. Alrighty, well, thank you very much, Scott, Graham, and Sarah. I'm Lisa K. Donner. Don't forget, right down there, click the subscribe button, leave a comment, and then you can style with one of these LibertyNation.com hats. We are putting the names in this hat. They can stir them around, and then we'll pick one out, and we will send it to you. So, I'm Lisa K. Donner. This is another edition of the LN Roundtable, a project of LibertyNation.com. Thanks so much for watching.
Subscribe and like this video. LibertyNation.com, where truth is making a comeback.